Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. We are in South Dakota once again in Custer, and we're on this journey interviewing a bunch of different South Dakota artists, all very different in what they do and all phenomenal. And today we have the privilege of sitting down with JK Dooley. JK, how are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you've had a busy 10 days because you were at the stock show in Rapid the last 10 days, so I appreciate you after that flurry of activity to take time and do some more stuff. So
it's my pleasure. I'm glad you're here. Let's
get right into it.
Okay.
Talk to me about all the different you work in a lot of different mediums, and I want you to take a moment and tell our audience all the different things that you do.
Okay. I think primarily I'm known for my watercolor art, Cowboy, Western, ranch life. I have started to branch out maybe about 10 years ago into some fabric collages, using my own art and also using vintage photos and making little vignettes that people can hang on their walls. Also books. I've done family books, generational canvas books that you can open, and I print the photos on fabric. And I have different sayings and fun things that go along with them. I've done cowgirl books, cowboy books, different things like that in fabric. And a couple years ago wandered into a bead store. Never been in there, had no reason to really go in there, and I'm now doing bead work because I got sucked into that whole process and just fell in love with the colors. And so I do a lot of some with patterns. I've started designing some of my own patterns and some completely free form that are impossible to duplicate and that are using just really wild colors and just some fun, weird stuff. It's just a kind of a compartmentalized, 2 weeks I'll paint, 2 weeks I do fabric, and 2 weeks I'll do beads, and I'll just kind of shift back and forth from that. So
just to break it up a little bit.
Yeah. And it's just been a lot of fun since I do have my house and I actually have a studio where I can stay and know that everything will still be here in a month. It's been a treat to get going, and it is a small space, so I can get projects going, but then after a while I've had enough of the small space being fabric hanging from the walls and, tripping over stuff and all of that. So fortunately my creativity for that runs out right about the time I've had it, as far as I said, tripping over fabric and things. So those are probably the three main things that I've worked with. When I first started, I did black and white pencil. Mm-hmm. Really enjoyed that. Pen and ink. Black and white pen and ink. And I still am I just started doing pen and ink again. I do pointillism, just teeny, tiny. Did you see that?
I saw that.
Okay, awesome. I do those, and I think that's it. I've had the urge to try some other things and realized that I didn't want to go down another road. I just wanted to stay where I was and continue.
Just kind of focus on where you're at right now.
Yes, just focus on that.
So do you have multiple projects going on at the same time?
I do. More in when I paint, I typically have 2 or 3 paintings going on at the same time. When I do beadwork, I usually have a couple of those going on. I do off loom work, and I also do work on a loom. So I can do a little bit of both with that. The fabric pieces, my last flurry of fabric in here, I had 8 pieces going at the same time. Wow. And it was chaos in here, but it was fun. There was fabric and pictures and lace and beads, and it was just awesome. It was really a lot of fun. It was all over the house, and I vacuumed the other day, and there was a piece of lace there that from a month ago. So it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. Yeah.
Did you grow up in an artistic household?
Yes, my mother painted. She painted before my brother and I were born. I don't know that she continued much as we were children because she was taking care of us. She did start painting again when we were gone, and when she was in our 60s, I think 60s and 70s, she started to take classes at the local junior college, and she was pretty good. And her mother was a pretty accomplished painter. And my dad's mother was incredibly creative with fabric and with sewing, beadwork, those types of things. My dad even did a little beadwork once in a while when he was a kid. So it's definitely back there. And I think it runs in the family. And my parents always encouraged it.
Okay.
They never, when I said I was going to go to college for art, you know, they easily could have said, that's great. Why don't you choose something that might make some money, you know, but they were very supportive and said, clearly that's what you want to do. So, you know, you might want to learn a little bit on the side of something else, but definitely go for it.
So you have a formal art education?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Drawing from Arizona State.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know that, I've heard some of your questions have been really interesting about education, you know, higher education and things. I don't know that I learned all that much in school in some ways of art, but I learned about a lot of different processes, which was handy. So didn't learn how to make a lot of money at it, but I learned how to do a lot of it. So that was helpful.
So how did you decide to focus on the watercolors? Yeah.
I couldn't do anything else. It was very frustrating for me. I tried oil and I learned a couple of good techniques from oil paints, glazing and different things like that. I just was not very good at it. I was not good at all with acrylic paint. It was all over my house, my dog. It was in my sheets. I don't know how. You know, I don't know if I drug something through it or what, but it was just a mess. And I enjoyed pencil. It seems I enjoy things that aren't as messy. I did pottery for a while, which is really messy, but that's a whole different thing. The watercolors, I've never had a lesson. It's a gift. It's truly a gift because it is completely, I can sit down and paint and not remember doing it. It's just get into a zone. And, I knew I wanted to paint Western and cowboys, but I didn't want watercolory, washy cowboys. So I played with materials until I could get them to do a little more of what I wanted and kind of went on in that direction.
And your focus is really scenes from kind of cowboy rodeo life.
Mm-hmm. I focus on a moment, not a bucking bronco, not barrel racing, not anything, not an event. I focus on a moment. So if you look at my watercolors, you'll see just one person there doing something. One of them, it's called Counting My Blessings. He's clearly praying before he goes into the arena. There's a mother and her son. I worked a cattle drive in Arizona, and this was 4 generations on the cattle drive. And so there was the little boy, his mom and parents, his grandparents, and his great grandpa and grandma were on the cattle drive because that's still how it's one of the few ranches in that area that still move cattle traditionally instead of by truck. And so I have a picture of just the mom and her little boy. It's there. I don't have any great cattle drive pictures or anything. So I just prefer the moment and let people interpret the mood. They can because they can't see a face, so they can interpret the mood. It can be anybody that they want it to be. It can be their granddaughter. It can be their grandpa. It could be, you know, anybody. And people seem to really enjoy that. They'll stand at the stock show this week. People would just stand and look and tell me, I just can see people I know there. And it means a lot. They picked up exactly what I'm trying to portray. And that's valuable.
They can really relate to it and they feel that. And
yeah, it's really valuable.
They're just little vignettes, different snippets of little moments that you're capturing. And I think it's really cool. It's really unique. I was looking at your frequently asked question page, which is pretty humorous to read through.
Yeah.
And you explaining like why you do certain things.
Yes.
And, you know, why do you paint so many butts, you know? And
that's a popular, there's one, God help me. There's one piece I did with it was actually the very first rodeo piece that I painted. And I was at a rodeo in the White Mountains in Arizona, small little rodeo. They don't care at that time. I'm sure maybe it's changed by now, but you know, I just roll up there in my truck with my camera and wander around and take pictures. And I don't have a fancy camera to do the long shots and all of that. So I just wander around behind the shoots. And I noticed this one guy, and he had all this color, reds and pinks and gold and blues. And I just, at that point, I had only done black and white. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, that is really cool. So I took some pictures and I started to paint that, and I fell in love with it. And that's just where it went from there. Because like I said, up to that point, I had only done black and white. So it just clicked.
And the reason they're talking about people's butts is because it's the perspective in which you're seeing the event taking place.
Yeah.
And because you don't have a camera with a long lens and because of your limited access or whatever and where you can be, this is the perspective that you're seeing.
Yeah,
but
it's just
you're
the moment.
you're capturing a moment
Yes.
that is very relatable, especially people that, are involved with rodeo or that lifestyle.
And most of the time they're just leaning over the fence or, they're just talking to each other and just being humans doing their thing. And instead of performing, they're just being themselves. And I think that's a lot of the moments that I capture are people that are unaware that I'm doing what I'm doing, and they're just living their life. They're not performing. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're just being themselves. And people don't allow that moment very often, so to capture people living is really fun. It's enjoyable to do. And then the fact that people that view the art see that is really important.
So what made you pick the rodeo?
I had an awesome, amazing teacher in college. He was actually in a junior college. I went to Arizona State and I was in an art anatomy class where you drew with charcoal or pencil. They taught you to look underneath the skin and draw the musculature and the bones and learn. We had to learn it all, but it was an art class. And it was fascinating. It was just amazing. And in that class, I met an instructor from the junior college that was auditing that class because he wanted to teach it at the junior college there in Mesa. And he was funny. And I had been in that art college at that point in that particular class. Everybody was very serious and very, just doing their, working, which is what they're supposed to do. This guy was funny. And so I kind of gravitated towards him, and he was an extraordinary artist. He just could do the human figure like no one I'd had ever seen. And he studied all the old masters, and he was just an amazing person. And we got to be friends. And so when I had an opportunity, and he had started teaching that class, I went and took that class from him because I just wanted to be in his space and learn from him. So we went on I kept taking classes from him in just various ways. I think I had graduated from ASU at this point. And I kept just any class I could get with him. And one day I think I was taking it was a class in colored pencil. And I had done a number of pieces. It was my first transition. He, in fact, is the one who said, your black and white is amazing, but you're never going to make money until, he said, you can go back to black and white, but it doesn't really garner the attention that color does. So he says, if you can do what you could do in black and white in color, he said, I think you should try colored pencil and go that way. And so I started that, and it was all right. I was pretty good at it. And I was doing an independent study with him, and he looked at all my work, and he said, this is all nice and it's all good. None of it is exceptional. He said, you've got 5 or 6 different subjects here. You've rendered them all very well. None of them will get anybody's attention because they look like everybody else's. So he said, if you're going to continue on with this, you need to pick one subject matter, become an expert at it, study it, learn it, do it. Because one day as you're painting, you'll get stuck and you won't be able to finish the boots or the chaps or whatever in my case. And he said, you'll get to where you're not stuck anymore. You'll figure out that problem. And then the next time you paint that or draw it, whatever you do, that problem won't exist. So he said, figure out what you like. And so I chose the cowboy and horses, and I know nothing about horses. I can ride them. I've ridden them before. But as far as people look at my work and immediately assume that I have horses, that I ride, that I live on a ranch, and they start throwing terms out at me, and I'm looking at them going, and I eventually will say, I appreciate you thinking that, but it's truly, God has gifted me to be able to paint a horse. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I can certainly put them on paper. And so he told me that, and I chose that topic because I loved it. My dad was a big strapping John Wayne looking man. He was an airline pilot. And we went down to Arizona. We lived in Illinois at the time. And every October we would fly down to Arizona, Old Tucson, things like that. We were on a movie set when John Wayne was there. We stayed in a motel where John Wayne stayed, and we saw Johnny Weiss, Johnny Weissmuller,
yeah.
Doing
Tarzan, right?
Tarzan.
Yeah, he was around doing something at that time, and they would do they'd practice their stunts off the high dive into the pool where we were just immersed in this interesting little world. Once a year, maybe we'd go down there. And I just fell in love with it, Gunsmoke and Bonanza and High Chaparral and Rawhide and The Rifleman. I mean, that's what I was raised on. For me, it was a natural progression, and just kind of went on from there. And then that same teacher, I got to where I thought I was good with that. And he was pretty blunt, which endeared him to some and not so much to others.
Yeah.
Personally, I loved him because he was blunt, and I've been known to be in my time. And I brought some things in for him and set him down and was all cocky about it. And he looked and he went, "This looks like shit." And I went, and I just looked at him. I said, "I beg your pardon." He said, "You heard me. You can do better than this." Okay, fine. And so I picked up all my stuff, and he was right. And I went home, and like two weeks later, I came in and I flung something on his desk, and he looked, he went, "Well, somebody lit a fire under your ass." Wow. And from that point on, that put me to a complete different level of what I'd been doing. And it was just that one instructor that did that.
I'm assuming since you were able to correct it, you probably saw what he saw.
Mm-hmm.
What did he see that you didn't see initially that made you better?
I think he saw me thinking I was good.
Okay.
Thinking that not reaching farther than I could have. And being, I think somewhere in the conversation, he said, you think you're a big fish in a little pond right now. He said, but one of these days you're going to be a little tiny fish somewhere.
Right.
And you better be good, because you'll not survive. And I appreciated his bluntness and his honesty. Mm-hmm. And I did find him years after that and told him, how much I appreciated it. And he saw my work, and he's like, I said, "You are the reason that looks like it looks." So then
he was impressed.
Yeah.
After
he was, he was, and he was a good man. He was an amazing teacher, very kind, despite his occasional, we would have classes. It was junior college. So you'd get some lovely petite little old ladies in the class and he would say the same thing to them. And it never went over well.
Right.
We had our critique up there on the board once, and he told somebody that and we had been nude models. Mm-hmm. And he said one of their characters looks like a Star Trek character. And of course, I just about fell out of my chair. I was laughing so hard, and this person was so offended. And I can understand that. I mean, I don't condone berating people, but he it's just the way he was. And he turned a lot of good art out of his classes. So I personally enjoyed him, got a lot out of him. But so he was definitely a catalyst in getting me that. And so once I chose the Western, then I continued to do what he said and just researched and took a lot of photos and just looked. And he taught me actually how to see color as in layers, as opposed to just looking at a color. So he taught me it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But if you see in my table, in my studio, you'll only see small white dishes of individual colors. You'll see nothing mixed. and nothing gets mixed until I put a layer on the paper. And then the color, I layer until I get the color that I want. And he actually taught me that in oil painting. So I remembered that glazing technique from oil painting and then applied it to the watercolors, and I can get some pretty rich colors that way that I couldn't get if I was just making a color in a palette. So
and that's crazy.
Isn't that weird?
Mean, and you know this because you've listened to the podcast. I am not an artist in the sense of a painter or, obviously photographer, but yeah. So to hear these techniques is just kind of like, wow, okay, that's brings it to a different level. So people that can actually do this, like my wife, it may be a tidbit that they weren't thinking before, and now they're like, oh, let me do this tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, and he had said, I'm going to teach you how to see color. And I was like, well, that's red. That's blue. And he said, that's not what I mean. He said, and he made us do these incredible color charts. We had, I don't know, say 50 colors. And we had to take each color and mix it with white, with black, and with every other color. And these monster color charts. But boy, you learned what happens when you mix one color with another color and what happens. And so it was a lot of really hardcore technique as well. And I went on then to take that anatomy class from him. And at the time I was in one of my many interesting jobs was harvesting organs for donation for experimental work and also for some donation. So at the same time I was in this anatomy class, I was dissecting people and able to see what I was actually then going to draw. And it had a huge impact you could tell from my drawings that I was looking at the actual thing when most of the other people in class were looking at pictures, which is what they had to work with. I mean, of course, that's what you would do.
Right.
So that was, he thought that was pretty cool, that I was doing that. He said, can I come down? Because that's how you learn. That's how they used to learn is working with cadavers. So that part was really valuable also. And he was a great teacher.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. I don't know that he's still with us, but he was amazing. He was amazing.
It's amazing how one person can affect that journey for an artist. And I think being blunt, like this instructor was, I think that's important because as an artist, you need to have a thick skin and you need to know how to take rejection because not everybody's going to love what you do. You're
absolutely right. And especially what I do. ASU was an education for me in many ways. I came from, at that time, a very small town in northern Illinois on to ASU in Tempe, Arizona, which of course is huge now. It wasn't that big that many years ago, but I was amazed at all the people that were there. And the art classes were very different. It was my first contact with many different types of people that I didn't really understand and didn't really want to understand. But there was one instructor that I had there, and I was dressed in jeans and boots and a t-shirt, and that's pretty much how I dressed. And he did abstract. That's how he worked. And this was a drawing class, I think. And we had our final critique, and most of the people in the class did abstract, and I did horses. That's horses and cowboys. And he put all the work up, and there was all this abstract work and a couple of other things. And then there was, I don't know, a horse and a rider or something that I had done. And he stood there and he looked, he says, okay. He said, I want to get this right out front. I hate cowboy art. He says, I hate it. I was raised here. I was forced to deal with it. I don't like it at all. And I'm sitting there, oh, geez. So this is going to be interesting. He said, however, if you look at Miss Dooley, you will see that she's in jeans and boots and a t-shirt. That's how she lives. That's how she dresses. This is what she does. And clearly she's the only one of you that isn't trying to impress me by doing the exact same work that I do. So he said, I don't like cowboy art. This is good. She did a good job. It's not one of her best drawings, but she stayed true to herself. And she's clearly not trying to impress me with what she's chosen to draw. He said, I suggest you people try and do a little bit more of that. And so he was blunt, but I was
that's a compliment in itself.
It was awesome. I mean, he was a wonderful instructor as well. So like the two people that I remember the most through my years in college were the two that were just said it. You know, they weren't trying to be nice and hold my hand and, oh, you'll be good. You know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So
good instructors.
Yes.
Learned a lot as far as getting a good foundation in the art that you do. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of business, you said. Not
a lot of business instruction. And I do have it. That's always been I went on my own and took a business class and accounting and things. So I could understand what was going on in that. And it still helps me to this day. But there were many people there who unfortunately were just told, oh, there'll be a sponsor. Somebody will find your work and love you and buy all your art. And maybe it happened for some of them. I don't know, but it was not a realistic thing to be taught, I don't think, in school, to not take the talent and then teach them how to do something with it and how to protect yourself, how to read a contract, how to know that somebody's not taking advantage of you, how to budget your money, how to balance a checkbook, things that if you were going to pursue any other field, typically you would know those things. But it doesn't seem, I'm sure it's changed by now, but at that point that wasn't something that people were all that interested in.
I think it's important, and I would think it would be important in art schools, because most of these people are going to go out and do art and do it for a living, and really understanding the business side, the contractual side, and also the marketing side of everything, I think would be so important to be realistic for these students that are paying, like we've said in the past, lots of money to do this. So,
and like I said, but I'm sure it's changed by now. I'm sure there's somewhere, some schools do offer that, or maybe I'd like to think that students are more aware now that that's necessary and they'll seek it out on their own. But at the time that I was going through school, that didn't seem to be much of an emphasis on. I mean, I got in the elevator there one day and there was someone there in the elevator in a lawn chair, and that was their art project, was riding up and down on the elevator in the lawn chair the whole day. That was my reaction. I got in and I looked and you don't know what to say. And I said something, and I don't remember what it was, and I'm sure it was not brilliant. And they said, "Oh yeah, man, this is what I'm doing today. This is my art, my final project." And I thought, "Oh my Lord, this is somebody better help him, because I don't think he's going to make a living at that."
Yeah, maybe he was a double major in sociology, and that was a sociology project.
Could have been, yeah, could have been. But that was
that's weird.
That was the type of thing I saw a lot of there in that era. That's what a lot of people were doing, and so it was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think you were smart by getting those tools and self-educating yourself so that you had those other tools to cull from, so that you could be a smart business person and be able to sell your art. And I can tell you from looking at your website, I can tell you're a smart business person, because you have, not only do you do a multitude of different things as far as your art is concerned, but you know how to sell it. And so I'm looking through your website and I can see, multiple revenue streams. You sell your art online, you're represented in galleries. You can buy your art on different products. I saw that. Tell us a little bit about the different things that you do. I mean, I mentioned a bunch of them, but how you came to decide that you were going to sell art in down these different avenues.
It's just one of those things that happened. It was not an instant epiphany or anything like that. I just realized I wanted to have a good website that would be easy to look at. The biggest thing was keeping it clean. I'd had websites in the past that were a little cluttered, and it was keeping the website clean and then limiting the product and limiting the ways you can get it. And then I just limit the images that are available as well. And just putting it out there. I think the internet has been a challenge for artists in some ways. I've had work stolen and printed and sold elsewhere without my permission.
Wow.
And that was before some of the technology that's out there now, that's not quite as easy as it was. but I've had that happen. But now in this day and age, I'm just now learning Instagram, which is, I'm a kind of old school. I don't have a smartphone. So Instagram was a challenge for me to figure it out, but I'm seeing the value of integrating that and because mine is a very visual product. So you need to see pictures, they need to be in color, they need to be available. Just having a website and living in Custer, out in the country, basically, which is what this is. That's probably the only way that I would reach people.
A wide audience.
A wide audience, yes. And it's in lieu of a portfolio that I used to carry, with photos and all of that kind of stuff. And you'd lug this portfolio around and let people see it. And there's a lot to be said for seeing an image on paper, in firsthand. But the initial concept and the initial ability to see something online is very valuable. So it was probably just doing what everybody else was doing in that particular way. And just trying to keep a clean website that's easy for people to see. And I use very basic colors too. So, I mean, the colors that I use, I have a very limited palette.
But it's vibrant.
Yes, they're very vibrant and they show well. And so that's why I've kept the website. It's all white background and it's pretty much you like it or you don't. I mean, my stuff it's not anything that inspires people to kind of wonder, well, do I like that? It's just, if you don't like horses, you don't like horses or looking at cowboys or the ranch life but you can still appreciate the technique. I've had people tell me, I don't like the subject matter, but boy, I like the way you paint.
And for our listeners, you need to check out the website, and we'll have the website listed on the episode as we always do. But the website is well worth checking out. It is very clean design, which I appreciate because I hate seeing a website that just mucked up with all kinds of random stuff. So it flows, it's very easy to navigate, and the art is wonderful. So
thank you.
Good job on that.
I appreciate that.
And good job. We've had this a lot of talk about social media in the last few episodes, and good for you for learning how to, embracing the technology and embracing, different things that you don't know about, and you don't even have a smartphone, but you're still like figuring out because you know how important it is.
Well, it is. And the funny thing is I did before I worked for 3 years for Verizon Wireless, and I had no choice but to have the latest up to date everything. And I just got so burnt out on all of it. And when I moved here and had no cell service because I was living out in the middle of the prairie south of Pringle, I thought, why do I even have a smartphone? I can't use it. I'm just going to go back to the basics. And I haven't really missed it. At all. I can text a little bit, but it's with my thumbs, so most people, I either say I don't text or if just call me, just pick up the phone. It's
not hard.
It's not rocket science. The whole Instagram thing was, when I first looked at it, it made no sense to me whatsoever, but I sat down and I'd research something to find out how to do it and figure that out. But I think, again, with the way my paintings are, it's a very, very valuable tool.
Let me ask you this. Have you sold anything via somebody seeing it on Instagram?
No, because I really just started like about a month ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's fairly new.
It's very new. In fact, it's wonderful woman next to me at the stock show. And I suspect she's younger than I am, but same type of, didn't know what was going on with Instagram either. So we sat there when it was slow and she says, can you figure this one out? And I said, I don't know, let me look it up. So there's these two very artistic women trying to figure out how to do computer stuff, when there was a lull at the stock show. So it was quite entertaining, I'm sure, if anybody knew what we were doing, but. You
know what? You could have set up your own little side booth and teach Instagram to artists, old school artists like Wes and I. I would have signed up. In fact, Wes, the podcast is yours. The rest of it, just talk to yourself. JK and I are going to go learn how to do Instagram.
All right.
Yeah, it's a valuable tool, and I do go into some of that kicking and screaming, but I can see where there's some things that I do have to learn. So. I'm open.
So you use Instagram. Are you on Facebook?
Oh yeah. Facebook has been pretty easy. I've been on that for years, and I have, I think, a couple thousand followers on my art, on my Facebook business part. And that has been, I don't know if I've sold anything off of that, but I've had some good relationships with people, some genuine kindness about my work and kind critiques, and they enjoy it. And I think that's been valuable as well. I think Facebook might be not disappearing, but it's not quite the thing anymore. And I'm concerned once I learn Instagram, it won't be the thing anymore either. But for now, it seems to be working out. But yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I used to do Twitter, and no offense to people who like Twitter, but it's just kind of a cesspool. I think now it's kind of, no offense again if Mr. Twitter is listening or something, but I couldn't get on there without seeing something that it's like, I don't really want to hear that or know that or learn it or anything. So
Right.
I still have an account on there, but it's private, and I just do my own thing on there and nobody sees it, so, but I did that for a while. So I'm pretty much Facebook and Instagram, and then just old time telephone seemed to work the best. Email.
So you have gallery representation here in the Black Hills area. Talk to us about that real quick.
That's been a really interesting beginning. When I moved up here from Arizona in 2013, did not intend to get a job. I had saved enough money that I could go for a year or so and just do my art and not have to work. And I went to Hill City. I was staying with some friends in Custer. And I went into Desperados, that restaurant in Hill City that Dan Dickey used to have. And Dan was very gracious and kind to me. And he says, he said, you should go into that gallery down there, see Lori at the John Crane Gallery. And I was, okay. And I arrived in May, and I arrived in April, about the 18th or 19th, I think. And this was Mother's Day, and they were having that big Mother's Day event that they do at that gallery. And so I didn't go in because it was crowded, and I didn't want anything to do with that. And so I waited a couple days, and I wandered in there with some paintings and just want to know if you were interested. And Lori was lovely and gracious. And, sometimes you'll take paintings in and somebody thinks, oh no, I have to tell this person no, because their work's going to be crap and I want to be nice to them. And she had that look because people approach her all the time. And she was very kind and gracious and had the look like, I hope I don't have to tell her no. And she really enjoyed the work, and she's had it there ever since. We go off and on, sometimes it'll be down because there's just not a market for it, or she has other art that's in there, and that works out fine as well. We just rehung some new pieces because of the stock show. But she has represented me since then, so it was just wandered on in there. And I know there's professional ways to approach galleries, and I've not yet done that. I've always just wandered in with my stuff and said, take a look, tell me what you think, see if you like it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I've had some interest to get into some places over in Wyoming or Montana, things like that. I haven't. Now that I'm settled and I can actually provide a body of work, continue to provide work, I'm probably going to pursue some more gallery representation. But if if they sell your work and you can't give them any more, that doesn't make them happy.
Yeah.
So I had kind of stayed away from that, but I suspect I'll start looking into a little bit more representation in other states. I did well in Arizona when I lived down there. I was in a gallery in Scottsdale and then also in Cave Creek. And that was back when Western art was big in Scottsdale. It's not so much anymore, I don't think.
We've heard that from a couple different people.
And we've
now.
heard even Scottsdale's not even the place to be if you're an artist. It's like Tucson and, of course, Santa Fe, I'm sure. But I thought that was interesting because you go to Scottsdale and that there's a ton of galleries, but it's kind of shifting away from them. It seems.
I think the last time it was big Cowboy art was when the Cowboy Artists of America had their big event there every year. And for some reason, I never did know the history. They stopped. And once that stopped, it kind of went on its way and turned into other things. So I think that's when I ended up with some stuff up in Cave Creek, and it went well because they were still ranching up there.
Whereabouts is Cave Creek at?
Cave Creek is north of the Phoenix area. Cave Creek, Carefree, it's lovely. At that time when I lived there, they still had ranches and a lot of rodeo and things going on up there. So it was a good place to be. It was a little less commercial for the art part, and a little more opportunity for actual ranchers and people that live the life to see my work, which seems to be the people that appreciate it the most.
How did you select the Black Hills to come to?
Flipped a coin.
And
Pretty much.
it landed on Black Hills.
Yeah, I didn't even remember that Mount Rushmore
or the
was
Tails,
here.
depending.
Yeah. I didn't even remember Mount Rushmore was here. You know, it was such a strange... I had lived in Arizona for maybe 35, 36 years. I went there to go to college and never went back. I just fell in love with the area. I enjoyed it. It was fun. The art, I was learning new things and had a lot of really good friends. My parents retired down there, so my family was there. And in 2000, my mother passed away. And so then it was me and my dad and I were really close too. And then he passed away. And after he died, I didn't paint for probably about 3 years.
Wow.
It was a really profound effect on me. And then one of my friends said, "Really, you think your dad would not want you to paint?" I said, "Yeah, I know." So I started painting again. And at the time, instead of painting, I got a corporate job. That was when I was working for Verizon. Great company, hated the job.
Yeah.
Just because I was working at a desk. But at the time, it was what I needed to do. Made good money, got a 401k. That's what moved me up here. So it was definitely worth it. But it was July, I think, of 12. And I just sat up one day and I went, I don't like where I live. My parents are gone. I hate my job. And I can stay here and bitch about it, or I can go somewhere else and start over.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes it's not always easy for people to do that. They have other commitments. They have different things. But I was in a situation where it was easy for me to do that. I was by myself. I had nothing to keep me there anymore. I have friends, of course, but they were supportive. So I had friends in Custer, and I sent an email just out of the blue and said, I think I'm going to go to Montana or Wyoming because of my art. And she emailed me back and she said, "Why don't you just come up and look at Custer, look at the area, because we're right on the border. You can kind of see both." And Custer, where the hell's Custer? I had I knew nothing about South Dakota. And I checked online to make sure that South Dakota was where I would like to live, that there were things here that I was already believing in and already a part of. And then I started looking at the pictures of the place. And there's a little town in the White Mountains in Arizona that I always wanted to live in, it was up by Springerville. And it's called Alpine. And it looked just like Alpine here. And I thought, whoa, I think I'll just move there. I had not been here. I didn't have really a place to live. My friends very graciously, without her husband's knowledge, invited me to live with them. And I didn't know that. I didn't know he didn't know what was happening until literally, I think, shortly before I arrived with the U-Haul and my dog. He was very gracious. And I lived with them for, April, May, June, about 3 months. They were very kind and would not allow me to give them money for rent. Just said, save your money and get famous, do what you want to do, and which I'll be forever grateful for. And then I found a place. I rented a place down way south of Custer, out on the prairie, and I was there for a year completely by myself and spent most of the time looking out the window. I think I had to just kind of decompress and settle into this world as opposed to where I was. And then moved numerous times until I found this house. So yeah, it was basically a flip of a coin. And I did come down once I decided that, yes, this is where I'm coming. I came down to visit, and they picked me up at the airport, and it was dark when they got me. Because that's about the only time, there's not a lot of flights in and out, coming from Sky Harbor Airport, and as a child, O'Hare Airport, because that's where my dad flew out of. I'd never lived anywhere that had a smaller airport. So that's been an adventure, but it was dark, and we went, and they lived out in the country was all I knew. And I woke up the next morning, and they had this beautiful big picture window in their guest bedroom. And I looked out, and it was just these pine trees and rocks. And and this meadow with the creek running through it. And I was just like, whoa, I can live here. This is awesome. So it's been, I've never regretted it. I haven't regretted the weather. My friends are like, oh my God, what are you going to do when it snows? I said, put on more clothes. It's not, it's really not that difficult to figure out, you just wear more clothes. And a friend of mine gave me a big heavy coat that had been her mom's, and it actually fits. I still wear it. It looks like a big sleeping bag, big down sleeping bag, but I still wear that. And I have not once regretted being here. It's been probably the best thing that I could have done.
So the people of Custer, pretty welcoming for you?
I have enjoyed Custer. Yeah. When I first moved here, I was in the area. And so I got to know some people then. And working at the gallery then in Hill City, you meet a lot of people. And my neighbors, I have really, really nice neighbors here. And I think Custer, one of the things I noticed about Custer was as I was getting my water bill figured out and, the different things you have to do when you move into the neighborhood, I got the feeling that they genuinely were happy that I was moved, not me personally, but happy that to have people live here. They're kind and I haven't had any issues with anything. It's been it is a very welcoming community. It was an easy move. This was only the second house I looked at. I knew the minute that I walked in that it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. And my realtor was quite funny. She says, well, I think I found you a house and it's small like you wanted, but it's purple. And I threw my arms up in the air. I said, oh my God, that's my favorite color. Are you kidding me? And she's really, I said, yeah, let's look at it. So a friend of mine and I drove over and I was very excited that I had a purple porch. So yeah, it was awesome.
Purple picket fence?
Yeah, and a purple picket fence.
Say that 6 times.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that. And that's my project for this spring. But I did tell you guys about my garden, the Garden of Whedon, which is...
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it has its own name. And
for Colorado listeners, it's not what you think it is.
Yes. Oh, my. Thank you for that clarification. I do appreciate that. Yes. I do appreciate that.
No Colorado lives in the Garden of Whedon. And I think they like it.
I think they do. But no, mine actually is the old-fashioned kind. Yes. So, yeah, Custer's been good. I'm happy here.
Yeah.
It's I don't see me moving again, especially after how many times it took to find this. So
yeah, kind of hard. Well, I don't know if it's the heart of cowboy country, but there's a lot of cowboys in the area.
Lots of ranch and rodeo.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're like right in your element that you always painted.
Yeah. And I didn't even know I didn't remember Mount Rushmore was here. I knew nothing about the opportunities for me. That's why I had thought Montana or Wyoming, but there's a lot going on here that I'm learning. Lots of art, amazing art here.
Yeah, and Hill City's an amazing art community.
Yeah.
They've kind of, back in the day when I was a kid and we'd travel to Hill City and Deadwood and all that, and so this would have been like the early 70s. Things were kind of, going south for the, those smaller communities, especially Hill City. And then when they decided to define themselves as an art community, I really feel that the community embraced that and really kind of worked to realize that. And they have some really cool galleries. John Crane's gallery is wonderful. Warrior Gallery is just amazing with Native American art and some other styles of art. But yeah, I think they've really embraced it. And that's been fun.
It's I always use the phrase artsy fartsy, and yeah, it's a very and the interesting thing that I liked about Hill City was they welcomed. I mean, if another gallery opens up, it's like, great, bring it on. The more galleries, the better, because somebody will come down to maybe see John's work or to see my work or to go to Warrior's work, and then they'll go, wait, there's a gallery over there I didn't even know about, and so it brings a lot to the community. The more of that you have, it's not competition. It's just, it opens the world up to a lot more things for people to see other than what they thought maybe was there. So
yeah,
that's
and
been
John's
valuable.
an amazing watercolorist. A lot of, it does some wet on wet, but a lot of dry, wet on dry.
Yeah.
And it's fine detail, landscape kind of stuff. And I just seen his release of the church in Rapid City, whose name escapes me right now, but just a wonderful little piece.
Stavkirk, I think.
Yeah,
isn't
there
it?
you go,
Stavkirk.
Stavkirk. Yeah, and it's just a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
So
so definitely talented.
Hill City's
it's
really
fun.
cool town.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Do you sell a lot of art off your website?
It goes in spurts. Some months no, some months yes. It's just kind of it's been a matter of building the reputation and getting the word out there. It's the good thing about the internet is what we talked about. It's an opportunity for a lot of people. And then the bad thing about the internet is it's an opportunity for a lot of people. So unless you have a way to get known and to have people even know you're there, it can be a little bit of a challenge as far as selling off of that. And when I lived in Arizona, I did a lot of shows and those were successful, but I got you could kind of burn out on a lot of shows. So I hadn't done any in South Dakota. I think I did one small one when I first moved here. And then last summer I did one, and I'm learning after doing the stock show, I really enjoy indoors, and you can walk away at night and they lock the door. And then in the morning they unlock the door and you walk into your booth. And so the older I get, the less interest I have in schlepping my work around the country and setting up and tearing down and setting up and tearing down. And it works, but it's work. And I'm not lazy, but I don't think it's the most productive use personally of my time. So my goal is to get either the internet selling my work, or we're developing some projects with a local artist here who's a woodworker and carpenter, and incorporating some of my work into his work as well, and letting someone else be a part of selling my work. And because if I'm at a show, I'm not here painting. So it's a trade-off of time. So the stock show was fun. It was like 9 or 10 days.
Yeah. So tell a little bit about the stock show. Like, was there, how many artists do you know?
Oh,
Maybe
man.
you don't know the number, but
I don't know. I had oddly enough lived here this is going on my 7th year, and I had never made it to the stock show. Anytime I had tried to, it seemed over the last years, it would snow. We just get this horrible weather, right? It's like, oh, stock show, oh, blizzard. It just never seemed.
Or bitterly cold.
Or just nasty cold. And so I just, I don't want to go up there. The way I ended up here this time was a complete fluke. It was a total last minute event. And now that I've been there and done it, I really enjoy it. Tons of people going through, and actually people who ranch and rodeo. And those are the type of people that when they look, because my work is not necessarily contemporary in that it's the type of work that people will instantly buy. It's more the people who have bought my originals are people that ranch, people that live the life, people that look at it and just can see themselves in that moment, or they can see, fortunately, many, many people, and as I said before, I don't know a lot about horses, but I get people who do that just say it's remarkable that I can paint a picture of a horse like that. And so those are the type of people that go to the stock show.
Right.
And those are the type of people that saw my work.
And somebody special saw your work.
Yes. Our governor, Kristi Noem, did stop in to my booth, which was quite a treat. I guess maybe I should have been embarrassed, but I've done so many things that embarrassed me in my life that I'm kind of immune to that now. I had no clue who she was. I had seen her, of course, but in person, people never look as you think they will. And she's a lovely woman, came into my booth and was chatting with me. And I said, and where do you live? And she says, oh, I live in Pierre. And she put her hand out. She said, I'm Kristi Noem, your governor. And I said, oh, for goodness sakes. Oh, hi. And I happen to appreciate her and her many of the things that she's done. And I told her so. And she seemed very grateful about that. And we had a picture taken with one of my pieces. And she mentioned, which I thought was a really awesome idea. She said that since they moved into the mansion, they've decided to only hang South Dakota art by South Dakota artists, obviously. Nice. And so she has, she said she'd like to visit with me about putting one of my pieces there in the governor's mansion.
That's incredible.
That was quite, pretty cool. She said we have a lot of tours going through and things. Yeah. So That was totally a God moment. We weren't supposed to be at the show. We got there late. We hadn't been set up for 3 hours when she came through. And she just, I don't know that she didn't go into the art section downstairs. She just kind of came up and went through that. And so it was a blessing, I think. And I think it was fun. I posted the picture on Instagram. It was awesome. I I know how to do this. This is so exciting. So I put it on my Instagram page. I still haven't figured out the whole hashtag thing. That's a whole nother story, but I got her. And that was my friends because nobody even knew I was at the stock show because I hadn't planned on going. So that was a fun moment.
Well, she's your people because she grew up in ag.
Yeah.
She has a farm, in the east central part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she's definitely one of your peeps.
She was very kind. She's very appreciative of the work. I'm sure in her position, you generally have to be gracious. But she looked at it like she was truly appreciative of the technique. So that was fun. And the people around, wasn't that the governor? How about that?
Yeah. I was in DeSmet on my way to Sisseton where I grew up to see my dad. And I'm sitting there in Dairy Queen and she comes bopping in with her daughter. And I think it might've been her mom, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And ordered some stuff and away they went. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've done shows where it wasn't necessarily a Western group of people that were there. And I don't do as well at those shows. And it's understandable. If I was at a show that focused on something that I wasn't interested in, I can't expect that someone would do well. But I obviously do better at the Western themed and ranch life. And even if I don't sell a lot, I always make some good connections. I have a couple of ranch families that have invited me out to take photos and do some things this summer with them, and just nice people, just kind, generous people. So it was a fun last minute surprise. So I'll do it again next year. Good. It was definitely worth the time. And again, being indoors and being able to sleep in my own bed every night too.
Well, and the fact that they close it up and your stuff is safe and nobody's going to mess with it.
They lock it up. Yeah. I don't even think they let people in to clean. Once you're in there, they let people in if you need people to sweep or something. But it's very secure, and it was fun. It was fun to do. Fortunately in the winter that I would have a stretch of days like that I can take the next 10 days and do it, so. And then Lori was very generous at the gallery because I called her and said, I'm going to steal my originals off the wall. I got to go. So that worked out well.
That's funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So another little tidbit. I went to college with Lori.
She mentioned that. She told me that. Told me that. Yep.
We worked at the same bar, and she's a lovely lady. Yeah. I like her a lot. Yeah,
she's very generous. She has been very supportive of me from day one, and I helped manage the gallery for a couple years, and I just decided that wasn't my forte. After a couple years, constant contact with people is not my best way to live. I actually lived upstairs of the gallery in a room up there for a year. That was one of my moves. That was cool because that was that old hotel, many years ago. But I came back and asked her if I could work upstairs instead. And so she's taught me all of the framing and designing and she's taught me how to design. I don't have her eye, but I can build things and put them together. And so it works well with my painting. She gives me the real meticulous, intricate things because she knows that's what I like to do, the fillets and the little tiny pieces and things like that. And I love it. Yeah. It's quite fun. So that's maybe just a couple days a week in the winter and then a couple days, maybe 3 days in the summer. So it gets me out of the studio, because I could hole up here for days and then realize that something had happened and I didn't know anything about it, so it's good to get out and communicate.
But you're what I would call a traditional introvert, I bet. That it's not that you're afraid to be around people, right, but you get charged when you're alone.
Yes.
And you recharge your batteries. A lot of people think, introverts and extroverts is all about like, oh, I like people or I don't like people. Really, it's about where you get your energy from. Even though I'm painfully shy at times, it's hard to believe to some of the people I know, but when I'm around people, I get like really pumped up. And doing interviews, like when anybody, but when we interviewed Georgia, that was down in Denver. I had a 6-hour drive to come up here, and I was buzzing the whole way just because of the energy that she brought. I really pulled together, and Jack was wonderful. And, and it was just, I just get really charged. So I can see that even like living south of Pringle and looking out the window, your batteries are just like really getting charged up. So
and I think it's important for everybody to find what does that, what lights you up. And I have a good time with people. Our booth was the loudest one at the stock show. We'd be over there laughing and yucking it up and saying things we shouldn't, which I won't repeat. But so I have a lot of fun, and I enjoy being around people, but then it's time to go and be in I miss my house. I miss when I'm not here, because the minute I pull into my little garage, it's like, and I just come in and see my stuff in my studio and my little plants. This is Loretta, by the way. They have names.
Loretta's lovely.
Loretta the
She's
lily.
Huge.
Yeah. She was actually
my peace dear lily, isn't it?
It is. My dear sweet friend Loretta actually passed away last year, and this was at her funeral. And so they said, please take a plant. And I, of course, took a small little plant because I have a small house. And they said, oh no, someone else took that. Take this one. And they gave me this monster. Someone had to help me carry it out to the car. And so, just these types of things. The furniture is all, that was my grandmother's desk and my grandmother's light and grandpa's glass that I told you about. So it's a very...
so I'm gonna stop.
Sure.
Tell us about your grandfather's, what we're looking at.
Oh, my grandpa was the town dentist in Fremont, Nebraska for about 50 years. He graduated from Creighton Dental School, and that's where he met my grandmother. She came with her family. They would practice on people cleaning their teeth. And she was one of the people that came in to have her teeth cleaned and clearly got more than clean teeth, because that's where they met, and they got married. And he started a practice in Fremont. So when he retired around 50 years later, the bank building that he was in took that window, and it says R.E. Dooley Dentist, took the window out of the building and presented that to him as a retirement gift. And so that has followed me from, I don't know if my brother ever hears this. He may be surprised that I have this, because I don't know that he knows I have it. He might think it's still out in the barn. Sorry, Bob. But I saw it one year when I was back there. And so my dad and I were there, and I said, what do you think? He said, yeah, take it. It's just out here in the barn. So it has followed me from since 1960-ish, early 60s. It's been traveling, and it now finally has a home on a lovely hand-built shelf in my living room. So
it's a really cool piece, because it is the window. I thought maybe it was the window from the door, but and it has R.E. Dooley, dentist, across it in this gold patina color.
Yeah, is that gold leaf?
It's gold leaf.
That's what I thought.
It's gold leaf.
It's really cool. It adds a lot to this. Your house,
to the whole ambiance of the old house. And he was a awesome, amazing dentist. He wouldn't work on his grandkids because he didn't want to hurt us. So he'd look at us and examine us, and then tell my dad, okay, take him back to the dentist in Chicago because they need a filling or something. But he sure as hell wasn't going to make his grandkids scream. So we'd go up and hang out in his dental office. My brother has a lot of the furniture from the office that was pretty amazing. Cool. He's had it refinished, and it's beautiful. He was a brilliant man. I found his handwritten class notes and awards that he had received, and his grade reports from college. And so I took them to Creighton. I called them up. I found their historian, and because I didn't want them when I died just to be disposed of. And I knew that my dad would be happy, and my aunt and my grandmother. So I drove this box of stuff down to Creighton Dental School a couple summers ago. And I also had my dad's ashes, and his sister had passed away. And so I had their ashes to put in their graves in Fremont. And my aunt was quite thrifty. So when my father died, I told her I was going to take the ashes to Fremont. And she said, oh, no, wait till I go, and you can do it in one trip. So that's That's why I had them both. She lived in Denver. That's why I had them both at the same time. But so I took the ashes down and I took this box of my grandpa's things, and I'd spoken to the historians, so they knew I was coming, but I took them in and there were these two lovely young ladies behind the desk that, of course, at my age looked 12. I know they were older, and I thought surely they're not going to be interested in anything like this. But I put it on the desk and I briefly explained what it was, and they both stood up and they came over and opened the box and were incredibly enthralled with the things that were in there. And one of them got on the phone, and out came the dean of the dental school. I heard her say, "You got to get out here and see this." And she came out and she pulled the stuff out and she explained to me what it was. And she said, "Your grandfather was a genius," because he was like 99% in metallurgy. They had to be a metallurgist back then. They had to know all about that kind of stuff. And she said, "This will be very, very valuable. Thank you for donating this." So there's a whole story behind that glass that comes back to me all the time. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool. He was neat.
Yeah, it's a cool piece.
Yeah,
I like it. So thanks for sharing that story.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, I think part of living in an old house too, because this house was built in 1900. So part of that is, the history of the house and then family history. And it just makes for a really peaceful, cool world to hide away in sometimes. So.
Yeah. And a lot of our artists live in older established homes. We were in Pueblo with
Cynthia Ramu,
and she has, we talked about it on the podcast, but she has a lovely old home. And then not attached, but right next door is her studio, which is another old home from the neighborhood. And so it's kind of neat to see this. I don't know why. A connection, I guess, from other podcasts. Since we're taking a little detour here, I have to say this weekend has some themes. I don't know if anybody will catch these. And the theme for the past 2 days, there's two of them. Steampunk. So we have to know what your relations to steampunk, and then Star Trek, because you mentioned Star Trek, we just got done talking to Tom, who we talked about Star Trek. So those are themes to listen for. So tell me your steampunk story. I don't expect you to have one.
I don't have one.
But John Lopez has a steampunk owl, and I think his squid or octopus is steampunk as well.
Yes.
And then we were talking because Tom...
Just so you know, you set me up. I'm like, all right, I cannot wait to hear what the story from JK is going to be about.
I bet.
She has a steampunk story. I'm
thinking, oh my goodness, I missed the assignment. I didn't do it.
And if you didn't hit me with the deer in the headlights look, I would have let you suffer a little longer, but I didn't want to torture you.
That's one of my better deer in the headlights look. I would say, oh my goodness.
But I just thought that was so funny today because Tom Rash's, one of his characters is based in a steampunk theme. And so anyway, I was really hoping, and it was early. Maybe I pulled the trigger too early. Maybe that steampunk story would have came next. I was expecting Grandpa's story be related to steampunk in his day in England, but it didn't happen. So,
well,
but there's your themes.
If I ever come across something I've done in that genre, I'll let you know. You'll be the first to know.
All right, so there was
we'll come back next year, and it won't be rodeos and cowboys. It's all steampunk, baby.
Big hunk of steampunk sitting around here. Yeah.
JK's gonna Google that later. Like, what the hell is steampunk?
No, I have some familiarity with it, but it related to my work. That's why I was like, I don't know where that even comes in.
Anyway, sidetrack. So I got it out of my system, Todd.
Good.
I don't even know where to go with this conversation at this point. I'm like,
all right, I will ask another follow-up question then. What advice would you give, like, I would say a young artist, but aspiring artist may be a better term, because a lot of the artists that we find that are emerging in it are in their older years when they have time to really dedicate because they've done their career and now they're doing what their passion is. My wife's mother was a painter.
She
painted
that
beautiful
picture,
beautiful landscape. She did that when she was younger.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And we have a number of pieces hanging up in our house secretly that her sisters don't know about. Well, they do, but it's an argument.
They will now. Yeah.
But anyway, what advice would you give to somebody who's an aspiring artist and wants to break into the biz?
Art is an odd choice for a career because it is not certain. It's so based on opinion. It's completely undefinable as far as it's not like a desk job at a software company or anything that you pretty much have a paycheck, a Monday through Friday, 9-to-5 job. So I think for me personally, the advice and it may sound like it'd be better to paint what people want or make what people want. But if you are always making what people want and you're never making what stirs you and makes you be creative, I don't know that that's any more fun than sitting at a desk. So I know for me, people say, well, can you paint this? Would you paint a picture of that? I could paint it. Would you know? And I've turned down commissions for a number of things. It's, well, why won't you paint it? It's not something that, could I paint it? And yes. Would you like it? Yes. Would I find many things wrong with it? Yes. Because it's just not what lights me up. And it's not necessarily the best way to make a lot of money, if you have that mindset, but it's the best way to have a content, peaceful life. And I think, especially since a lot of the artists, as you said, they're not teenagers. Teenagers aren't interested in a content, peaceful life, typically. But as you get older and you start to realize that that's more important possibly than other things. I do well enough. I pay my bills. I am building slowly. I believe I have people that, oh, your work is beautiful. How long have you been doing? Oh, 40 years. It's, oh my, kind of thing. And the whole time I have always stuck with what I believe in and what makes me, not so much makes me happy, but gives me peace. And technique is important, of course. If you paint like crap, it doesn't matter if most people probably won't like it. So get a good teacher, a good instructor, find someone that, I followed this guy around. I went back and took a beginning drawing class from him just to be in the room with him. And if you can find someone like that respects your talent and respects the fact that you want to learn, that's important. Experiment with different things, don't get stuck in a rut. Know what you can't do. I could no more do what the people that you've just been talking to do than I've tried sculpture. It's horrific. It's, oh, Dooley, put that down. You don't want to even go anywhere near that. So don't do what you aren't good at. I know within a very short amount of time if it's going to be something that I'll be successful with. Material. I knew with the watercolor, I took a pretty serious watercolor job and I hadn't done watercolor. And I told him, oh yeah, I can do that. And oh crap, he gave me the job and I had to go buy paints and brushes and I did it and I worked for him for a few years, but I just knew in my heart that I could do the watercolor and I was right. I don't know if other people get like this, like they could say like in a zone kind of thing. But when I'm creating the three things that I do the most now, the fabric, the beadwork, and the painting, I don't know when the day starts, when it begins. I forget to eat. I fortunately remember to go to the bathroom. That's always important. But it's just it's a feeling that you have that you're doing. My feeling is that I'm doing what God put me here to do. And I know my talent is from him. And I happen to be the tool that he's using to express what I'm expressing. And it's just important to know how you feel and to know where you're at. And you can stand anywhere, and don't get pushed around. It's hard. It's hard. I've had times when I should have said yes to that. I should have done it. And I have said yes a few times and I've not been happy, with the project. They loved it. but I wasn't happy with that. And I wasn't happy with myself because I didn't stick to my belief that I shouldn't have done it. So it's a thing that, take a business class, know how to balance your checkbook, get out of debt. If you're in debt, you can't sit and create if you've got a $50,000 credit card bill, and you're wondering, you can't make stuff that there's a possibility it's not going to sell and it's not going to make you money if you're so far in debt that you can't see straight, so it's fun to be a creative person. It's fun to be an artist, but you have to have a real life along with that. Even if you're selling gazillions of dollars, you have to have a business manager you can trust. You have to have someone that you trust that's making your stuff for you or something. You have to build relationships. You can't just be a reclusive little artist that goes and hides in a corner somewhere. That might be interesting for people, but it doesn't get the bills paid, really, I don't think. It's important to get involved in the community. It's important to volunteer. I volunteer as much as I can with people, and it brings me joy in many, many ways. And if you don't think you have anything to offer, you do. I volunteer at a nursing home, and I've got a nursing home full of grandmas and grandpas, and all I do is go visit, and you just sit there or maybe help them open a package because they can't, things like that. If you think about other people and give to other people, it comes back. And it's hard. I think sometimes artists sit by themselves in a room and they become very self-involved and they become wrapped in their own little world, and they begin to believe, and this is a matter of belief, but they begin to believe that it's them, it's their talent. And my belief in God tells me that it's not me, I'm his instrument, and it allows me, I think, a lot more freedom to, okay, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If somebody doesn't buy it, it doesn't buy it, but it's what I was supposed to paint. It's what I was supposed to create. And someone will appreciate it, or it will make someone smile, or they'll see a picture and say, oh, my granddaughter, or my grandpa, or it's my horse or something like that. I loved when people look at my work and they smile and they just, oh, look, doesn't that look like so? I got a bunch of that at the stock show. It's like, oh my God, look at that. Looks just like so-and-so, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a very interesting world to be an artist, and to the fact that someone will pay money for something that I've created because they want to look at it every day. It's huge. It's very humbling, I think is a good word. So
Bob Ragland would say every sale is a miracle.
Yeah. Oh, he was awesome. I loved that interview with him. I loved him because he doesn't have a smartphone either. I said, oh my gosh, another one. This is awesome. Yeah.
But he Facebooks all the time.
I got on his Facebook page after that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
I was, and I'll take this opportunity to, if you guys don't get an opportunity to listen to as many of these podcasts as if you can, you should, because I've learned something from each one of them. And I'll admit, I've never heard of any of them because I'm not familiar with I was familiar with Cherry Creek, the art show, but I don't know any of the Denver artists. But what fun, what a wealth of knowledge and inspiration, and just little tidbits of stuff that I would not have known otherwise. So he was a nut.
He is.
I'd like to meet him.
He's a character.
He would like to meet you.
Yeah, he's a character.
I just want to go sit on his porch with him.
Yeah.
It'd be a good time. I'll tell you what.
He would sit out there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
he's just an amazing man. I like Bob a lot. And I mean, I walk away really liking everybody.
Well, good. I definitely
You're not
don't.
going to cry,
I might, just a little bit.
This is what I love about you, dude.
There have been times in my life when people have walked away from me and not liked me. So it's hard to believe.
Well, I can guarantee that's not going to happen today. So
I have people that stumble with my name, for the initials for some reason are confusing. And I understand that. And so I answer to anything, it's usually, it's okay. I've been called so much worse than that KJ is fine, or whatever. Is it MJ or is it, what is it?
Yeah.
And so I always laugh at that, but it's fun.
Well, I think that the interesting, we really started out to do the podcast about really focusing on the business of art, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, I love the humanity of it. I love to hear their stories. I love hearing your story. I love hearing the story about your grandfather. And you walk away from these interviews. I know I do, and I know Todd does too. You walk away with this connection to this person. Like, I feel like I know them and I've known them forever, and I want to continue those relationships with them. So it's a really kind of, for me personally, and why I continue to do this is, and want to continue to do this, is because I get this personal connection to somebody that I wouldn't have had, any other time.
Well, the interesting thing about this whole thing that I think, even though we are taking advantage of this amazing technology that I listen to people all over the world on podcasts, that I listen to a lot of Christian people that I follow, what they do, and different art things and all of this stuff. And here in my little studio in Custer, South Dakota. But the fact, I think, that we're having an actual conversation, which are things that in this day and age, people don't do as much. So I think it's a really valuable opportunity for people to just sit and talk and not be texting and not emailing and Facebooking and tweeting or twittering or whatever they do. It's kind of a lost thing. And this seems to maybe be reviving it a little bit, doing the podcasts. And you guys are sitting in my living room. It's cool. And obviously, it's not a big enough house to have a lot of people, all the time. But I think it's a very valuable service, and hopefully, people that listen to it will enjoy it. You guys sitting here reminds me, when I bought my house, the first thing I thought was, I asked my pastor if he would come and bless my house for me. And I didn't know that was a thing. I just had this feeling, I said, Pastor Jeremy, I bought a house, will you come and bless it? He said, of course, and he's an amazing man. Ours is his first church. He's in the early 30s. He's very kind and very generous. And he said, sure. He said, do you want to invite some people? Do you want to have some food? What do you want to do? I said, I don't know. Is that what I'm supposed to do? And he said, well, if you'd like to. So I'd ended up, we did it on my birthday in October, and I invited a number of people, and they all showed up, and he showed up with this script, and we went in every room. We started at the front door. We came in the living room. We have a picture of everyone in my bathroom that could fit. There's 3 or 4 people standing in the bathtub. It was so funny. My kitchen. We didn't go in the basement, but I figured everything filtered down into the basement. And he had a blessing prepared for each room. We had a candle, and then we celebrated my birthday. And then we also, my dog passed away shortly before that. So he did a little service for my dog. I had her ashes. And so it was quite a thing in my home. And I had probably 12, 13, 14 people in here, and we had food and they brought presents, and it was just such a fun thing, and people I hadn't seen in a while. And just, again, we sat and talked and visited, and I don't think people take as much time to do that as, oh yeah, we'll meet for coffee. And you never do, very
it's easy
seldom.
to say that.
Oh, yeah.
And not
That's typical. A lot of times that's how you get rid of somebody, is I'll meet you for coffee, and then you're like, oh geez, I hope that, hope I don't ever have to do that. I have like a long list of people that I've started to make of people I need to get together with, because we always say we're going to get together, and I think we don't necessarily do. Yeah,
so.
and I think that's one of the advantages of being self-employed most of the time, and because you should take a break and go and actually have a conversation with someone, or go volunteer, or do something in that manner, and people don't always have that opportunity.
I think what you said is like incredibly important. I think in this age that we live in, between the technology and then the fact that advertising and society says you need stuff, we're bombarded with stuff. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite yoga instructors always says, you know what, you don't need all that stuff. You are perfect just the way you are. Mm-hmm. You don't, there's, everything is fine. And you can't go to the store and buy what we are having right now.
Correct.
Or giving of yourself. So like you said, volunteering, whether it be at a food bank or an old folks home or wherever, that feeling that you take away from that experience is special and it's irreplaceable, and it'll make you feel good about yourself, and you'll be riding on a high for days afterwards, because that's what it gives back to you.
Yeah.
That thing that you bought in the store, that new phone that you just bought from the Verizon store. Yeah, it's fine. You know, it's cool for a couple days or whatever. And then who cares? It's just a thing.
Exactly.
And it's disposable. And it really, things break. You decide you don't like them after a while. It's a very empty thing.
Yeah, it is. And I heard one thing once, someone that a podcast that I listened to, she was remarking on, if you ever, something about the value of something. And if you want to see what people once thought was so valuable, they worked nights and neglected their children, go to a junkyard and look at the cars.
Right.
You know, so you see this car that somebody possibly couldn't afford and had to sacrifice many things for, that it's no longer valuable in any way. And it's not, I have nothing against people having stuff.
No.
I think it's awesome. You know, people that have as much stuff as they want and
I like things.
Everybody, you know, as wealthy as you want to be and all of those things, but don't sacrifice
the experience.
I have my camera with me all the time. I find myself looking through the viewfinder instead of at the actual thing. And I miss everything around that I could have been looking at as well. And so it's that type of situation. This lifestyle allows me to actually have human interaction. And you would think, holed up in my studio, you know, that wouldn't be the case, but I get to be with people when I want to and when they need me. But then again, I can sit and do my thing and not be at someone else's beck and call. So, and you sacrifice things. As I said, I had a job, the very well-paying job and all the benefits and everything. And it was good for the time. And I just realized that's not what I wanted to do. It wasn't my gift. And a piece of advice is learn what your gifts are and learn what steals your peace. And I've learned a lot of things that steal my peace, and I don't do them. Or if I do, I catch myself and, don't do that. You know how you're going to be if you do that. So just little things like that, I think people overlook sometimes because it's really important. That's why I don't watch television. You know, I've got this fabulous big screen here and DVD player that I was gifted to me with the house. I watch Gunsmoke and Andy Griffith and you know, old cowboy movies or old different movies like that. And Blue Bloods, I like Blue Bloods a lot. I'll watch that. But I can control it. I don't have to worry what commercial is going to come on that I don't really want to see or that takes my peace, you know, makes me go on a different direction. So people need to know that. You need to know what steals it. Listen to that inner voice. Yeah. And listen to your heart and your conscience. And it's there for a reason. You know, it's actually very liberating to know what you shouldn't do, because then you're pretty much happy all the time, which is kind of a nice way to live. It is. It really is. Things bother me, but I just realize how blessed I am and how grateful I am. And it's like, oh, well, you know, stuff happens. But I met Toinette through where she worked, and now you guys are sitting here in my living room. So you just don't know where things are going to lead to. And it's important to let yourself be out there and be a part of things that you know are good for you, not that possibly aren't the best use of your time. So I think that might be good advice, hopefully. It was a very long answer to a short question. No, that's exactly what we want. Yeah. So I'm going to steer this conversation back to some business stuff real quick. Not only do you sell originals, but you also sell prints of your work? Yes. Okay. Yes. The whole print industry has been a fascinating thing. When I had my studio in Scottsdale, I also did my own printing, and I did printing for other artists. And that was fun to do. It was valuable to me. I met a lot of artists. It was valuable, I think, to the artists, because artists, frankly, are a pain in the ass to work with because they're very particular. And if you don't understand that mindset and you don't understand why I'm not happy with that particular shade of blue that you've come up with, you think I'm a jerk. And I'm just thinking, but that's how I painted it. Why can't you make it look that way? I don't understand that either, So I learned the printing process and the colors, and so the artists that I had as clients were happy because I understood their mindset, and that worked out really well. And when I moved up here, I had no clue where I was going to live, so I set all that aside. I donated all the printing stuff to a junior college, tech institute, type place down there. And I have not gotten back into that because printing has evolved so much now that it's easy to do. I have an online company that does mine. They just print on demand for the bigger pieces. And then I use a local printer for my business cards and for 8x10s and things like that. And it takes an eye, it takes good quality, someone running that can see color, goes right back to that, learning how to see color. So those work out well. You just go on the website and click on it, and it takes you to this other place, and you can choose a size, and they ship it to you. So.
And I want to mention again, you have a place where you can get your art printed on various items too, so that people can enjoy your art in other ways.
That's been a venture that just started. I'm fine with my work available in other forms. I don't know that, there's some forms that I probably wouldn't want to see my art on, but I've teamed up with another artist who's an amazing woodworker, carpenter, craftsman. He built that beautiful door in my studio, and he does kitchens and libraries, and that's who actually had the booth at the stock show. And we've kind of collaborated on introducing my work into his wood pieces. And so he wanted me there at the stock show, and it actually worked out really well. So that just started 2 weeks ago, and I think that's going to work out really well. So those will be available at some point when we refine that. And that to me is important, because then the entire piece is handmade. He makes them by hand in his shop. He has 2 guys that work with him. And so the entire piece is handmade by local Custer artists. So I have nothing against mugs and t-shirts, that's fine. But personally, I wanted to be a part of more of an organic process. I know him well. I love his work. He loves my work. We work well together. He sees what I see and vice versa. And his work is such high quality, so it allows me exposure in ways that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And we had samples at the stock show, and people ordered right off the samples, understanding that they weren't available yet. We had people that had insisted. He sold a set of samples, even though they were scratched and not perfect. People, I don't care. I have to have them, So clearly we're on to something with that. And I don't need to have my hand in the middle of it. I don't want to run it. I'm sure not going to tell him how to make it. But the fact that it's local, and he can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm going to come over with this sample, take a look at it. So that's an interesting process for me to be a part of. And I like that. And so things like that allow artists to work together. The whole artist competition thing, I don't understand. It's a silly thing, huh? It's a silly thing. I don't understand when other artists get jealous when another artist sells something. It makes no sense to me at all, because if one artist is selling, that means art is selling. It might not be yours, might not be mine, but someone's buying art. So if someone's buying art, there's a really good chance they're going to buy mine at some point.
Right.
And the ability to be able to work with another artist and get his work out there as well. He's very well known in his field, but this is a little different, to have original artwork. Prints, but prints of original artwork printed on his wood. And we've got found someone up in Rapid who does amazing quality sublimation process, onto the wood. And he's been a joy to work with. And he totally, first thing he said when he saw my work is, I need written permission from her to do this, which is what you're supposed to do. So right then I knew that I was working with with somebody that I could trust. And again, that goes back to that working with people that you trust. So I'm looking forward to that coming and working into something that will get my stuff out there in a little more unique way, I think is probably what I'm looking for than the typical way. Everybody's got mugs and that's great and t-shirts and stuff, but I just wanted to do something a little different. People go, whoa, I've never seen anything like that before. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's fun. It really is. I'm very impressed with how they've come out.
So talk to me about pricing. Where does your work start, and then where does it go?
I have anywhere from the originals. I've sold from 1,000 up to 10,000. It just depends on the piece and where it's at. Prints, $20. I try and get as much of a range as I can. I talk to people at the stock show. I said, email me and let me know that I saw you. I'll send you a discount coupon for prints, to get a print. I mean, I just like people to have my stuff, and I donate. I've donated to functions. There's a Old Stony. I've donated to them last year for the first time. And then she's asked me for donation again. And I've got a couple more in the hopper. If it's a cause that I believe in, I'm fine to donate it. And if I get business out of it, fine, but it doesn't really matter because it's a cause I believe in that I'm raising money for. So, and again, the fact that they think my work will raise money for them is a compliment to me as well. So the pricing is, I think, pretty fair range of.
Yeah, you have something for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Everybody can own a piece of your art.
Yeah. And then the fabric is very reasonably priced. That's like $80, 150, different prices. The beadwork, depending on the amount of work in it, that price goes in different ways as well. So it's all out there. It's all, I think I try and keep it affordable and not too crazy. It doesn't matter what it costs if it doesn't sell. So you stick a big price on it. Oh, that's nice. But, I'd rather sell 100 of them at $10 than, wait for the big sale.
We had this discussion, last night. When you're donating artwork, do you just give it to them or do they pay for your art and then hope to recoup that money and make more?
I will donate a print without any expectation. Okay. If I donate an original, there has to be a minimum. Yeah. Because, and I don't know that everybody always understands that, but if you asked a realtor to donate their commission, they wouldn't be real happy about that. So I think artists, again, that's part of standing up for yourself. You have to value yourself and your work enough to not let yourself be taken advantage of. And an original piece of art is part of you. It's valuable. It's not something that should be negotiated. If I feel that the cause is worthy enough that I can donate an original piece of art, I don't feel that I'm being greedy to ask for some money for it. And not everybody feels that way, but I think that's fair. I just think that's appropriate. I think it takes the value away from an artist if you constantly give things away, because car dealers don't constantly give their cars away. So why should an artist?
And that's exactly what Peggy Detmers said is, if I was to give it to you and you were to sell it for X, because she even has an expectation of what it's going to sell for. And if it doesn't, she won't let him sell it because it devalues what she has in other galleries. And I've never thought about it until last night about that. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of times people want to just have you donate stuff to give. Like they want you to give them something so they can make money, and they don't care what it sells for. And that's why I love talking to artists, because it gives you a perspective that you wouldn't really know. And I worked for a nonprofit, and I know I received items to sell at silent auctions and live auctions. And you believe in your nonprofit, and you believe in everything, and you just almost expecting that people are, oh, you believe in it, you're going to, give it to me. So I really appreciate the fact that I'm starting to hear the other side of the story, and it's very valid. And coming from a nonprofit, I don't know if I would have felt that way. So I want to get the word out that artists shouldn't be giving their stuff away. People shouldn't expect stuff for free. And and it should be sold for a level that is commensurate with what they're getting in galleries.
And I'm more than willing to take a cut of the price, to cut the price down, but to give away a piece that I could have made $5,000 from, I just don't think that's a fair request. No matter how much you deal with. And I think artists allow themselves to be taken advantage of. They don't want to stand up. They're so excited to have the sale or the exposure that they sacrifice their own value for that. And can't think of any other profession that does that, really, if you think about it. And I don't understand why artists should be expected to. You don't go into the store and ask them, well, I see that that's $100. Can I give you 90? That happens a lot, with artists. Well, I see that price. Can you give me a discount? Perhaps if you're a collector and you've bought a number of things from me in the past, right. I would be happy to do that. But just out of the blue, it's not a flea market type thing. No offense against flea markets, but it's again, it goes back to artists not standing up for themselves. And I don't mean stand up for yourself and be a bully, but for goodness sakes, stand up for yourself and be professional, and don't let your career be looked at as, oh, isn't that cute? She paints. Oh, isn't that nice? What a nice little, how lucky you are to be able to sit at home and just paint. It's like, they have no idea what it's like. Not that it's bad, but it's a different world. It's discipline. There's a lot involved with being self-employed artist. It's not to be given away or taken lightly. And I'm blessed that I have can get a part-time job. I work at the gallery a couple days a week, and I enjoy it. It's fun. It keeps me in the art. It gets me out of my studio and makes me actually go out and be with people, which is important. But it's part of an art craft. So it helps contribute to my discipline and to what I do. I hope that people start to realize that we're probably the only profession that people expect us to give our stuff away and be happy about it and do it again.
Well, you'll get that exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they're right. But exposure is not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah. And I say this in jest because our friend Jay Jaramillo said, people die from exposure.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah. I mean, it's cold outside. You can die from that, So, and that's probably where I heard it because I listened to that. That was the father and son.
Yes.
That was fun.
Memory.
Yeah. Jay's awesome.
They were wonderful.
Jerry's awesome. But, people are going to get tired of me always referring back to the old podcast. But if you're listening for the first time and this is your first, you need to go back and listen.
They're all good. They're all good. I actually
self-plug.
There's another podcast that I listen to that's more art.
You can't say it on
business.
Our podcast.
No, I wouldn't say it anyway. But it's more art business. And when I first stumbled upon it, I thought, this should be interesting. And I went and picked each one that I thought had a topic that I would enjoy. And then I listened to the first one, and he said, now, if you've gone through and picked topics that you think you'll enjoy, and I went, oh my God, he's here in my house. He said, you need to go and start from the beginning and listen to everyone because they build upon each other, which is what this one does as well. And I said, okay, fine. Clearly he's the coach and I'm listening to him, so I probably should listen to his coaching. And he was right. So it is, you can sense a theme through your guys' podcasts, and they are enjoyable to listen to, and you do kind of build on them. So I think that's valuable self-promotion.
I don't know.
Valuable and shameless self-promotion.
There you go, shameless self-promotion. Todd's just grinning at me like, oh my God. I should have left him at home. Yeah. So quick. Go ahead.
Well,
paper, rock, scissors, quick.
Snip. I got scissors.
I was paper.
And Todd was paper, so I get to ask.
Go.
And I bet we're probably on the same wavelength because we seem to be. He always steals my thunder, and sometimes I steal his. On creativity, and this is a Todd question. He's asked that before, but I like it. So on the mornings you get up and you just like, I don't really feel like painting today or doing beadwork. How do you either get in the mood or what do you do to when those things happen?
That's a good question. Most of the time I feel like doing at least one of them. If I don't.
And the beauty of doing multiple different types of stuff.
That's exactly what got me started doing different things And that's why I work on 2 or 3 paintings at the same time, because I'll be painting along and get stuck on something. And if I keep painting, I'll damage the piece, but I still want to paint. So I'll go on to another painting and keep doing that and just work through them until they all typically get done at the same time, which is kind of fun. But yeah, that's one of the reasons I started doing other things, is because I feel creative. I want to do something and I can't. Oddly enough, I have one of those coloring books that I'll sit sometimes. I know that I just want to make color, but I don't want it to really mean anything. Or if I make a mistake, I don't want it to matter. So I have and it's all mandalas and beautiful shapes from Italian architecture that have been put into this adult coloring thing. And I have gel pens and colored pencils. And sometimes that's what I'll do. I'll just sit and have on a podcast, or during football season, I've got a football game on or something on the radio. And I sit and color little, and or I'll go work in the garden in the summer. I'll go out and garden. But there's always something for people to say, I just don't feel it. I understand that, but there's something else that could be it. There's another, there's another something that could be creative. Those little coloring books are fun. It's just, anybody can do them. I experiment with different colors. I didn't know anything about gel pens. I'm learning about those. So that's something that the colors are still there. And I actually will think about other things as I'm doing that, and I'll write something down, to do. So there's usually something. When I garden, I'm very creative as to how I put the garden together. And that has to, of course, be planned and on a grid and all that, just because that's the way I am. But that helps in the summer. I'll go out and garden or something. So yeah, I ride my bike. And yeah, so if there's just totally nothing there, I'll ride my bike, because I'm right off the Mickelson Trail, so I can do that. I've got a trainer for my bike, so I can ride it indoors in the winter, and I'll watch a DVD or something. So, but most of the time I can find something to do.
And there's always something to do as a small business person.
Yes.
And that's what you are as an artist. You're a small business person.
Yeah. And so there's always paperwork to do. There's tax season. Mm-hmm. There's now taxes to pay for the show that I was just in, so there's book work and correspondence. I'm a firm believer in thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes. It's how I was raised.
Bob Ragland.
Oh, Christmas Day, my mother was in there, get your thank you notes written. And I just still do that. So I'll do that. I have Christian themed notes that I send to people if they're not feeling well or something. I'll just do a correspondence like that, thinking of you, different Bible verses and things. So there's always the office side or the communication side of the business that needs to be tended to.
I'm glad you mentioned the whole thank you note thing. That's like a huge thing. I don't think people realize in this day and age how much of a difference that can make in somebody's life by just sending a quick little note. Even if, like you said, to say hi or to say thank you or whatever.
Yep.
And I love Bob Ragland's idea that he'll do a little, little piece of art on the envelope or something. And I just think that's awesome.
I think in the day and age, again, technology, a text thank you or a email thank you. I'm the same way with photographs. I like paper photographs. I like photographs I can have in my hand. I spend every once in a while, I've got boxes of photos from my childhood and my parents, my grandparents. I've got a photo album from the early 1900s of my grandmothers. They're in these long dresses down by the river. These things that you read about. I have a photograph of Mount Rushmore under construction, so things that you can feel and touch. I got a thank you note just the other day that I was so touched. I donated. I didn't even know there was a lot of rodeo in Alaska. Did you know that? I had no idea.
I grew up in Alaska.
Oh, did you?
And,
okay.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I had no clue. And I did a painting of a cowboy from Arizona at a rodeo. And I've had 2 or 3 cowboys track me down because they recognize their gear on their paint. They've seen the painting. Somebody said, hey, that's you. And it's just based on their chaps, the color, everything else. And I've had them contact me. And this is when I lived in Arizona. So this particular gentleman contacted me and he said, I love your work. He said, can I buy a print? I said, no, but you can have one, since I painted you. Thank you very much. And of course, you can't see their face. You don't know who they are, but the rodeo crowd knows. And so this was 20 years ago. And I got an email from this guy a few months back. And he said, this is Wyatt. Still loving my painting. Thank you so much. It's on our wall in our living room. He said, I'm helping a young lady in Alaska who's running for Miss Rodeo Alaska. And she's having a silent auction. Would you consider donating a print? I said, if you can get it framed, I'll donate it because I'll have to ship it and everything. And I didn't have time in the time frame. I said, would you like more than one? And he said, well, okay. So I sent him 4 prints and he got them and he thanked me for them. And I didn't think anything of it. And about a couple weeks ago, I thought, I wonder what happened to that girl. If she won anything, what the story was. And the very next day on my Facebook page, there was a notification that I'd been mentioned in Miss Rodeo Alaska. And I went, holy, what the heck? And I looked and she had won. And she had listed people who had donated. And I was like 3rd on the list, JK Dooley's exceptional cowboy art, and the link to my website. And so I put a comment in there. I said, oh, congratulations. I didn't even know. And then just last week, I got a handwritten thank you note from her that thanked me for participating. Hope to run into you sometime, and it really meant a lot and it's a young lady from Alaska who's clearly very busy. And she said, I'm so sorry I didn't get on this sooner, on her Facebook page, but it's just been this month of craziness. But she took the time to sit down and write a thank you note, and I'll donate to her again, because it is an awesome thing for people to do. And I think it's a lost art.
I think you're right.
I occasionally even put sealing wax on them, which is fun.
That is cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's a little art thing. But,
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's another one of those, just don't lose track of what's going on.
Right.
And I have had one funny story. A guy contacted me again. He recognized his gear. And he came to the studio and he was maybe 18 years old. And you think of rodeo, unless you're around it, you think they're small, they're big strapping guys, and they're not. This guy was a small, wiry guy. He came by and I gave him a print and I said, can I just ask you what caused you to choose the colors that you wear? Because it was green and yellow and red and black and all of this stuff. And he was very polite and he says, well, ma'am. And I just, at the time, I didn't feel I was old enough to be called ma'am, but it was okay. And he says, well, ma'am, I realized that I was going to be spending a lot of time in the dirt and I wanted to look good while I was down there. And I just fell in love with him. He was so funny. So whenever I see that piece, I think of him, in that story. And it's just a genuine kid, and that's what he chooses to do. But so you never know who's going to come in and out of your life when you do your art. It's
a special thing. Yeah,
it is. It is a gift in many, many ways. Sometimes you think, oh, why did I get this gift? I said something to my accountant last year. I said, I know God gave me this gift, but I'm beginning to wonder if he gave it to me and meant for me to make money at it. And I know she laughed, and clearly we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but it's an interesting world to live in, and you never know what people you're going to meet and whose paths you're going to cross. And when you flip a coin, where you're going to end up. It's just crazy. And then this house I found, I don't know if you noticed the chair in the front yard, the barnwood chair with the cross on the back. The day before I found this house, I had read a little insert in my church bulletin, and it was helping families be closer to Jesus. And they said something, pick a chair in your house and just put a cross in it. And then the next day when I came looking for this house, there's a chair in my front yard with a cross in it. And I went, well, clearly this is where I'm supposed to be. Because that was just such a series of events, that ended up here.
That is a great story.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap this up, but I got to ask this question. I've been asking it every pretty much every single podcast as of late. So this is my Bob Raglan question.
Okay.
Because Bob wants to know, when you get a big payday, you sell a big piece or whatever, what do you do with your money?
That's a good question. I save some, and I spend some, and I give some away.
That is an awesome answer.
That is an awesome answer.
And it's just, you got to save something, and you got to give something away. And then if I spend it now, through the years, I have pretty much everything I want, for my house and things. So now I spend it on gardening things or or food, good food or something that I find as a treat, something for a treat. But yeah, spend some, save some, and give some away.
Fantastic advice. Well, on that note, JK, thank you so much for being on the Tenant Podcast. We really appreciate your time this afternoon. And from the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.